approach doing this film after reading the script?
I felt like the major thing was just try to, this film was done outside of the Hollywood system, so there wasn't any executives telling you how to change the scene for story or for plot points. We were just really trying to be as honest as we could in the performance. So with the kids, Anthony Mackie, Jeffrey Wright, and we were just trying to find honesty in the material. So that's really how, the script was in the beginning. But being out there shooting in Marcy, shooting in Ingersoll, and also Bushwick Projects, we just felt like we wanted to be as real as we possibly can and be authentic. So that was our approach to as a director.
Now, George, this film rises and falls on Ethan and Skyland. How did you find them? Because they are just, I told the boys, I want to take them home with me.
Yeah.
They were just so amazing. And if you didn't have them cast properly, this would have gone a whole different way.
Yeah, and 2009 is when I started looking for the kids, and then in New York first, because I felt like we should find them in our area where we're going to be shooting, and I just didn't find the right kids. And then 2010, Skyland came in an audition. He was there the same day as Ethan was. They didn't know each other, and so I was like, wow, they both were amazing. Two kids, and all in one day. So I put them in a room together, and their chemistry was just awesome. And the movie didn't happen that year, so I had to start all over in 2011. And I just didn't think they would be, I thought they would have grown too tall or too big. But they were the same height. They were the same kids. It's like nothing changed. And they came in on the same day again, and I just felt like this is faith telling me that these were the kids. I was very nervous about it because I felt I have done films with kids before in certain films, but they were only like maybe 10 scenes, 11 scenes per movie. Here, they're in 165 scenes. There's a lot of behavior, there's a lot of emotion, physical. Can they really do a whole film in 8 hours instead of 12 because of the labor laws? And can they really take being in an environment in the neighborhood? And can they be LA kids to feel like they're in New York? But so we set up this boot camp, and for 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks, the parents got them there early for me, and learning, talking to other kids in the projects, going to addiction programs and seeing what heroin and seeing what meth can do and how the kids react to that. All that was very helpful to have us succeed. Their talents were already there. I learned that I could talk to them as an adult. I don't have to bring down my vocabulary as a director. So they were able to maintain and be able to become great partners for me in the movie.
Talk about the title of the film. How did you come up with that? And how strange was it to sell that?
You know what? That was there in the beginning, the title, and I was thinking as the movie was shooting, everybody just said Mr. and Pete. Nobody said the inevitable. I think the character, Dipstick, actually came up to me. He's like, man, how do I even know that word? It's probably the only word I know, So, and then it kind of tied in, as I saw the whole movie, and it all tied in. And that just kind of reminded me back when I was in high school or early year college. I remember one of my professors or teachers told me I wanted to be a writer. They told me, your grammar is terrible. And he said, you're never going to be a director again. He actually said, you people have problems writing. And I was like, really? And I just thought, wow. And then thinking back years later with this movie, is the inevitable is like, because of the circumstances, a lot of people think people in these situations are going to fail. Like, it's inevitable you guys are going to fail. Like, but Mr. don't listen to that at all. He just keeps moving. So I felt like it was very important to keep the title because of that, because he doesn't fail. From outside of marketing, I was hoping that people don't think the movie would feel that way, but I know you have to see it to understand it. So again, I stayed honest and not be, stuck with marketing or the rules that I learned in the Hollywood system. So I'll see if I'm right or wrong maybe next week.
The reason I say that is because I've been telling people outside the U.S. about it, why it is such a great title.
Yeah. And
then once you explain it, because I've seen it and they haven't seen it.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah. It was great, too. We were able to show the film in London, and we were able to go to Giffoni, Italy, and Copenhagen, and it's like, wow, people are, they're rooting. It's a human story to a certain degree, and it's the first time I actually show my films, in some of these environments I never had through festivals. That's why I learned the importance of festivals. So.
So I love the music in the movie. What was the process like? And I know you worked with Alicia Keys.
Yeah.
With that. So what was that whole process?
That was interesting because I felt like I wanted a fresh perspective of music as well. And so we talked early on with being involved with music and scoring. Plus, she was very interested because she never done that before. So it's not like just putting a bunch of songs in the movie. She actually is trained and she went right to the motion of some of the scenes. So I think with her combination of her and Mark Isham doing music and then her doing the last song of the film, it was kind of fresh and kind of great process. She would be on tour, I'll send her scenes, she would send me music back with the scenes, we'd make the tweaks. It was awesome in that whole process, and it was just outside of the boundaries that I have had in the past.
Did you have an audition with Jennifer and Jordan, or you didn't have any audition?
I didn't have an audition with Jennifer because I felt like from my conversation with her that she can be able to deliver the role that I wanted. She was down for the tattoos, the punk hair look and the facial look being drained. She was gun-ho, and I really was excited that, wow, if this comes off great, people wouldn't expect that. There's several actors that came across that I just felt like, wow, they would be great in it, but you kind of expect them to be great in it. But with her, it was different. But with Jordan, she came in and auditioned with the kids. I put her immediately in the room with Skyland, and they were great together. And Skyland looked up to her. He admired her in real life like he did in the movie. So when it came down to the kiss, he was just really shy. And he didn't want nobody around. I was like, you're taking this like it's a love scene.
Well, they both seemed like they came at it with some nerves. So was that kind of almost fun for you to watch them work this out?
Yeah, it was kind of fun to work it out. And then I was just joking around. Like we do 2 takes, 3 takes, and then I was like, okay, let's do it one more time, So it just kind of worked out. And then there was a great thing in that moment when she walks away and Pete sticks his head out. That's Pete, that's Ethan. He came up with that himself. That was something surprising, that being how great and how in tune they were in a role, that he just instinctively did that. So that made that moment make it even better.
Now, George, you bring in Reed Moreno as your cinematographer.
Yeah.
Reed, I just adore beyond belief, and she always delivers something unique. This is not the kind of film you would really expect to see, her work on. So what led you to Reed, and then what were your considerations in establishing your visual tone to mirror your emotional tone? Because you've got a great grit and visceral nature.
Yeah. Well, I think the key was I always feel like sometimes you go opposite. Even though the world is tough and the environment is tough, that don't mean the look to me have to be draining. I went the opposite. My goal when I first talked to Reed was, the film that really did that, I thought really well, was Do the Right Thing, because it really made you feel like it was hot in summer. It was always sun blasting through the windows, and it was always sweat. So I watched that movie, and I let's do the same thing and put blast sun, get the heat, use the environment. But, let's make it our own. And in talking to Reed early on, I liked her work. I was familiar, with Frozen River. I really liked what she did with that film. So when I met her, I was because I couldn't use my other DP. I had to work with a whole new crew in New York. We had to work with crew in New York. I couldn't bring anybody from LA. So when I sat down with her, I started noticing that she knows exactly where to put the camera. She knows how to be right there next to the actors. And sensitive, very sensitive. And also her being a mother and was very helpful, because with these 2 kids, she's almost became a motherly figure as a DP, and how she talked to them as well. Some DPs don't know how to do that. So all that instincts, and I'm just directing the scene where Mr. goes to Anthony Mackie and says, just get my friend out of Riverview, and I'm just directing the scene. I look over and Reed is DPing with tears in her eyes. I'm like, that's emotional, because she knows exactly where she needs to be. And I'm, working the system. I remember having a DP, on a film who was great, but after he set up the shot, it's the newspaper. So it was great. It was great to have that.
Yeah, Reed's very immersive.
Very.
What she shoots.
Yeah, just very instinctive. So.
Was Pete's character always Asian American, or it didn't really matter his ethnicity?
It was always Asian American, and I felt like early on, coming from the Midwest where I lived, I didn't really see that a lot. I mostly saw African Americans or Latin, in that environment. In Chicago, they took all the projects down. In Milwaukee, they're almost all down. In New York, they can't do that. It's not a lot of space. There's about 50, 60 projects. And one particular project that we shot in called Ingersoll had a large Asian community. That made me feel like, wow, this is real. Because I didn't know. I just felt like, wow, well, people think I'm just making it Asian because it is. I don't live in New York, but is this the real deal? And it really was. It's a 30%, 40% ratio to Asian community living in that particular projects, and that's why we chose that particular projects. And it was good for Ethan to see that. You know, I remember his father was like, wow, we never would have known that. So, and I felt that was a fresh perspective because they were saying that it's not about race, it's all about economics, you know, and it's about addiction that can affect everybody. So I felt that was very fresh, and it was tough to find the right actor, Asian actor, to really bring that, because I didn't see a lot. I saw maybe 300 misters and maybe about 50 Asian. It just was having a hard time finding the right one, and Ethan was happening to come in at the right time.
Like, what's special about Ethan that you saw?
I think most of all is his timing of his, you know, he does a lot of humor. He did some comedies in the past, but also mostly his facial. I didn't want him to say much. I want him just to look and take in, and he just did that really well. He had the right eyes and the right behavior, and I just thought that was great.
He left a lasting impression on me. That was an
Oh, yeah.
excellent choice, because when I'm thinking of both, I'm thinking of Ethan because I've never seen him that type before. That was great.
Yeah, and it was just it was interesting too, just within the scene where he shows Pete Mister his iron on his back, you know, just doesn't say anything, just shows him, or the scene in the hallway when he doesn't want to go with the neighbor lady, just the little how he moves back, you know. I just felt like, you know, that's how great they really were, is that what's happening behind the words, and they were actually to understand subtext, you know. And some kids, a lot of adult actors don't even understand. It's not what you say, but what you don't, and they already had that instinct, which was great. So that's what I really applaud him for, and it was great just working with him to have that understanding.
I understand that Sarah the hamster presented a problem.
Yeah.
Didn't take direction too well.
Yeah, I thought that scene was. I remember that day too, because we had like 20 minutes to shoot it, and I was like, "This is gonna be the worst piece of shit like scene ever." I was just like, "It's gonna be worse because the hamster wasn't working. The hamster stopped, and then they picked it up." I was like, then we put the camera behind it. It just, nothing was working, you know? And the kids were like, no, this is going to be great, George. And it just, somehow, you really, and everybody in the set was trying to make me feel good. Everybody was saying, George, all you need is pieces. Pieces. I was like, I don't want pieces. I want all whole scenes. But it actually worked out with the editing. That was one of the things where the editor saved the day, and it is what it is. So, that was tough because not only was I working with kids, I was working with animals. So
I was going to say, I like the way that the relationship of the boys developed. Because at first he didn't want him playing with his Nintendo or whatever. And it was believable how they came together to the point he was protective of him.
Yeah, that's the thing is I love transformations with characters when they can change from the beginning. Early on, when I read it, I was like, wow, there's a little Midnight Cowboy a little bit, you know, two people who don't want to be together, who don't really wouldn't hang out together, and they kind of evolve. And I just felt like that's what the movie's about, where Mr. learns that we need other people in our lives, and sometimes the people we at least expect are the ones who can bring us over our hump. And they were able to understand that center right off the bat with our discussions. So I was just like, Mr. don't want this kid around. You don't want him. Until the very end, it changes. So that's the heart of the movie.
Skyland
Last question.
sort of blew the whistle. He told us originally Alice was supposed to have been
Yeah,
dead.
yeah.
What made you decide to change it?
You know what? When I read the script, I felt like wow, this was the moment where I couldn't believe it in the script. Sometimes, you know, a script is a blueprint, and then when you shoot it and you see it, it just felt like, wow, this is good, but it just didn't quite, it felt like it was too much. It felt like it took me over the edge. And Skyler was brilliant in the scene where he realized that she died. He actually goes on the computer in the library because he can't afford a computer, and he reads about it. He just, the way he did that scene, it was just an amazing scene, and I hated to cut it, not because of Alice, but because of Mister. And I said, sometimes it's better to cut the little things, and it made a difference. But that was the one that we struggled for a long time. Should we keep it or not keep it?
Put it in the DVD.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you.